Okay, here we go. Yes, welcome to Everything Awaken Project. So there's all three of us, so we can make this as helpful as possible for you three, wherever you find yourselves in your context. So big thing today, myself and Blake, this is the entire staff for the Awaken Project. And so we just want to share with you all what we do, specifically with young adult ministry. I feel like a lot of us, we've heard plenty of presentations on, we know that there is a young adult ministry gap, specifically within the Lutheran Church, that people our age, there tends to be this, well, maybe it's like youth group extension, maybe it's just you just one big long dating series, but it doesn't actually become like a legit ministry that people that are out of college and trying to figure out like where do I fit into my local community and my job and everything that goes into doing life on your own for the first time. That there's a need to be met there, and it's not just take everything else that goes on in the church and trying to mash it into one, the early 20-somethings or early 30-somethings and hope something sticks. But there's right ways to do it. Hey, look at that, today's presenter. So my title, Gap Year Director. The more prolonged portion of what we do as a ministry is run a gap year program. So it's 8 months. It's in the brochure as well, but it combines Bible school along with intentional residential Christian community, along with, we do a lot of travel. Our students this past, we did a West Coast trip to Washington State for a week of Bible school. We've done so far 2 out of our 4 Quake events this year. So Wichita, Wisconsin, Dells, and we have Chicago, Minneapolis, and that's a really truncated Quake event circuit. Usually, this year we were supposed to go to St. Louis, San Antonio, Harrisburg, and Phoenix again, but COVID is, I guess, still around. So darn.
Do you know what a Quake event is? Okay, so a Quake event is through Life Promotions, and Life Promotions is an organization out of Appleton, Wisconsin. If you've ever heard of Bob Lenz, it's his organization, but it's a youth gathering. So it's a weekend youth gathering they're at different hotels in different cities. And they put that on. It's a ton of fun. So Steven and I, we both are products of a gap year, which was actually through an organization called Youth Encounter. And they used to put those on, but Youth Encounter died back in 2016.
2016, yep.
So RIP to them. But they were around for like 50 years. And they served a lot of people and did a lot of cool stuff. But the Quake events was selling that name is what helped them die and not have debt. So like they didn't go bankrupt, they just, it was it. So anyways, Life Promotions put those on, and we partner with them, bringing students and support staff to these events so that the students in the gap year can get this hands-on experience in ministry.
Yeah.
Is it mostly college students or college and high school?
We've had both, like people that we have in our program, so the people that attend are middle school and high school students.
Middle and high school students.
Yeah. And so our students that come, from the age range for our program, it's 18 to 25. And so they come in primarily with relational ministry being their goal. A lot of the Life Promotion staff, they're more so trained on just running the event from an administrative side, versus the people that we bring in, they're there to actually engage with students and have the more relational ministry conversations. So that's what we provide for the event. And then running, there's a food packaging workshop that our students run, their own workshops and a little bit of production and stuff like that. So that's the support step. Like when Blake says supporting the event, that's what we actually do. Yeah. So, and then Blake does all things creative because he's good at that. Okay, so we're gonna try and hit everything here as best we can. Mission, vision, needs met, gap year structure, student success, whole 9 yards. If I'm going too fast, let me know. If I'm going too slow, let me know.
If you have questions throughout this,
I would say this is
just interrupt us.
By no means any kind of rigid. Okay, so mission, pretty simple, straightforward. Is it going? Got it? There it is. Be awakened, be disciples, be Jesus. Look at that. I'm honestly surprised by how much when we talk about the needs of here we need to reach young adults, not just because we want them in our church building, not just because that we want to be trendy, but the gospel still can reach people our age, and I think that gets lost sometimes. So
that's, and actually, so I follow all these preachers on Instagram. I don't know if you guys know who Chad Veach is? Okay, so Chad Veach is at VU Church out in, or not VU Church, sorry, that's what it's in. He's at Zoe Church
Yeah.
in LA, and so he does a lot of ministry to like celebrities and all this stuff. But he made a comment on a podcast a few weeks ago that just like struck a chord within me, and he was talking about how young adults right now are falling in love with the culture of church and the culture of ministry, but they're not falling in love with the gospel, and that's a big issue. So when that culture dies down, or they realize, okay, like this is just a trend, what happens next, and where is the solid grasp of the gospel and who Jesus is in their lives, you know? So that's something that we want to focus in on, is like the heart of who Jesus is. How does that apply to us? It's a lifelong journey, and not just a trend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and obviously we want to meet needs as they present themselves in 2022. You know, so maybe that looks a little trendy, but at the same time, what meets the need itself is gospel. So, and then vision. There we go. Disciple Christ followers to live intentionally in faith, relationship, purpose, commission them to live out the gospel that knows no earthly bounds. So, how exactly we meet that vision? Go to the next slide. So with the Awaken Project, specifically the Gap Year program, so yeah, equipping students to share the gospel, bingo, that's number one always. The need that was present and what we were able to address with the Awaken Project. So our host site, all these pictures from back here are from Mount Carmel Ministries. That's in Alexandria, Minnesota. That's where the Gap Year is actually held. For about, honestly, probably about a decade and a half, they've been looking for some type of, whether you call it interns or like what we do with the Gap Year, or like students that are from the tech college in town living on site. There's been a consistent attempt to try and have young adults be a regular part of the ministry of Mount Carmel. Specifically, so it used to be a summer camp. It used just to be, June to August, that's all you do. And then as buildings were constructed on site that had year-round capabilities, that's only been around for about 25 years. But camp's been around since 1938. But the concept of a year-round ministry for us is still relatively new. And so what happened was all these buildings got built that are usable year-round, but no one was doing anything with them. So it's like, well, if we have the buildings, we either use them, and if we're not going to use them, then like, what's the point, honestly? And so a lot of our history too out of Mount Carmel, so if you're familiar with the Lutheran Bible Institute at all, so LBI out of Minneapolis, they built Mount Carmel as their where they were going to hold their summer sessions. So they had classes fall, spring down in Minneapolis. In the summer, they came up to Alexandria, and that's where they had summer classes. And then as the ministry continued to evolve, and as LBI, they went under in 1986. Mount Carmel became that just the final place for still where young adults can come together to study the Word, all that good stuff. We've got some incredible educational facilities. I mean, when I use the word camp, and some of y'all might think like, all right, so you're telling me I got to go pee in an outhouse when it's minus 15 degrees outside. Our facilities are phenomenal, straight up. I mean, they're as good as you could expect for a retreat center. What's up, Devin? And I think that's a huge. We're not just asking you to come live out in the woods for 8 months, but rather like we've got facilities that can accommodate someone actually living there, which I think sets us apart from some other camps that you just you're on, an extended summer staff and using those same facilities. So that's pretty cool. And then we talked about the partnership with Quake Events Mount Carmel. The Awaken Project is its own. We're a 509(a)(2), which is under the 501c3 umbrella, and so we exist on site with Mount Carmel, but we're not under their ministry umbrella. We're technically separate, but we're just step in step with them, and then partnership with Quake Events too. So we're not sponsored by either of those ministries, but we work really closely in order to do what we do. So so actually I just talked about all that. So year-round programming, tri-season. Try not to use the term off-season because that implies that you're not doing anything of like real value. So I need to work on that, still using the term tri-season, but retreat staff and relation ministry, Quick Events. Was that a fly? Oh, the chair break. Ah, jeez. Oh, no. Great. So, yeah, Blake, anything you want to add on that?
I forget. What slide's next? Let me see.
There you go.
So, actually, real quick, just how we became, in existence. this was an idea that we had actually back in college, and we actually had we both are into worship music, and so we were like, man, let's write an album. We're dreaming, right? And then we got a bunch of people together and we're like, hey, let's all write an album and let's send this thing out everywhere and be the next Hillsong. And that didn't happen. So
shocker.
We were like, there's still a need, and we were kind of buzzing off of Youth Encounter and our gap year experience that we had. And so we saw, especially once Youth Encounter died, we're like, there's still a need for young adults, if they want to experience something after high school, to go to and to encounter the gospel and sit at the feet of Jesus for a year. There's still that need. So what can that look like? What can we offer? How can this be something that is beneficial to those people that want to go through that? And so we talked for 3 years about what that could look like, and how it's going to actually meet that need. And we're going to touch more on that stuff. But that's how it came into existence. It was an idea for a worship album that's turned into actually a bigger thing. And I think it's more valuable, more important.
We have enough worship albums.
We're not the next Hillsong.
Yeah. I did find it, one funny story. So I'm not huge on the whole manifestate, speak things into existence. I wouldn't consider that particularly a very sound philosophy. That's just my 2 cents. But we wrote down a lot of the vision stuff. I do support writing down your goals. That's good. And we wrote down everything as okay, if everything goes the way we think it could to get this thing off the ground, we thought, okay, Gap Year program can launch. I think we had it set as September 1st, 2021. We wrote that down way back in winter of 2018. And the Gap Year program actually launched September 7th of 2021. So we were 6 days off, 3 years prior. So I do think it's pretty cool that we were at least, this is the only thing I'm going to take credit for the two of us, that we were at least willing to continue to listen to, I think, what God was speaking within us, even if we had absolutely no idea what it looked like. And it's, I don't know, for most of us in there.
How many students do you guys have participate?
We started with 3 just this past year. So in that sense, is it huge? Not at all. But we got someone in the midst of COVID, and I think for a lot of people looking to start young adult ministry, they think they have to have this entire massive swath of people. If you don't have that, then why is that your expectation? And we did it with 3 and we were able to make it work. And now really the big goal is just get it off the ground, tweak, and now we're on pace right now to get to 12, which is our max capacity, for this upcoming year.
And the students that we got, this is where it's God just amazes me. So 2 out of the 3 had no idea who we were, what we were doing, and actually we had no connection with one of the students that came. She attended a Montessori school, and they printed off a flyer or something. I don't even know what we had on our website, but they printed it off, posted it in the school, and then she called us one day and was like, hey, I'd love to apply for this. So we have no idea. Never
got a hold of the school, never gave them a poster, but she still found us. And when I first, so we just have a Google form for application, and when I saw her name, I was like, it's probably a bot. Yeah, it's probably fake. I don't know how that would work, but it's probably fake. And then I started doing my digging. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a real person. We had 0 clue who she was. That was really exciting.
Yeah, so it was cool.
No.
God just worked in an awesome way.
So.
And kind of reaffirmed for me, and actually probably for both of us, that this is a need, right? It's something. She wasn't ready to go to college. She loved mission trips, wanted to live life on mission for a year. So that's why she joined.
Mm-hmm.
So not to get ahead of the presentation, but is it only right out of high school gap year, or do you have other?
No. So actually, one of the students we'll talk about, Courtney, later. She was 2 years into an online degree. Yeah. Okay. We'll get there. So yeah. But so kind of what we've been getting at throughout. So study, service, community. That's what runs concurrent throughout the entire year. But mainly in the fall with Bible classes. That's September through December. That's the meat and potatoes of what we're doing. Service more so in the spring with Quake, and then community throughout. I think what I loved about this past year with the gap year was learning how to do residential community with, sure, your bubble. I mean, we definitely have our own cohort of students that's just their crew, but then also learning how do we interact with Mount Carmel staff and Quake staff, people that are they're on mission with us, but they're not necessarily living with us day to day. But then expand that into, here's the people that are coming to these events, how to minister to them, and then obviously people that we just meet, around the community. But I like that it was tiered. It wasn't just we've kind of got our isolated bubble, and then we got to go try and talk to everybody else as if they're just someone else. They're their own thing. Yeah. Anyway, what do we got next? Haha, yes. So some of the classes that we had fantastic content this fall. Absolutely, I was blown away by how well classes went just for year one. And I talked to a lot of these people too, like even just with 3 students coming in, like the temptation is to kind of view it as like year 0, that it's just you're the test run. We're doing this just to see if it works. And they brought it. The classes that were chosen, we try to do as much of, let's center everything, obviously one on scripture, but that we can at least get to probably the more often used bits of scripture, or things that are more commonly seen for a Gen Z person in today's culture. So like Gospels, yep, that's huge. Genesis, yep, creation story, that's huge. Psalms and prayer, yep, that's huge. First and Second Thessalonians with Camilo, we looked at that more so from like a modern day exile perspective. So how do you live in today's, like specifically within the United States, how do you live as a Christian in a culture that honestly is a lot of, we don't really, not necessarily like enemy mode towards, but it's pretty apathetic, and using the Thessalonian church as our model for here's how we live as citizens of the kingdom of God, viewing this world not as, it's we live here, but it's not home. So
Camilo, something cool, and I'm gonna gloat a little bit. He's like Louis Giglio's right-hand man, like number 2 or 3. Yeah. So he runs like the Passion City student. I don't know what it's school. It's
PCC's young adults.
Okay, so like with that content that he brought in, like he was killer. So he's awesome. He's got a podcast too, if you want to check him out. Just great at connecting young adults to the gospel, and also just a great preacher too. Like, check him out for sure.
So,
okay,
how's it going?
Loading over.
Cool. Next. Yes.
So did you guys have to pay any teachers to come, or was it not?
Some we did, some we didn't. Some just wanted to do it, and some we had to pay them to get them in, and then pay them for their time there. So
we did offer like to pay for their flights, and we lodged them for free, fed them, all that stuff. But there was some sort of payment for sure either way.
Yeah. Here we go. So here's what you just asked about. So with Courtney, she had 2 years done. 2 years done at Liberty University, and she was staffing the virtual Quake that Blake mentioned earlier. So we had an advertisement out at Virtual Quake, just 45-second. Here's what the Awaken Project is. She was just making sure those videos were running right in time. So we weren't exactly looking for her. But when she saw the video, she was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And then like 2 weeks later, I guess her words, not mine, but she just woke up one day and the very first thing in her mind was, I got to check out the Awaken Project. And then she calls me later that day and she's like, hey, Steven, I want to apply for this. How do I do that? I'm like, why do you want to do this? Oh, God told me to. Okay, all right, sounds good. I'm not going to argue. So it very clearly, let's take a break from school and let's be a part of this. She has been the presentation layout, that's all her. She was actually hired onto Mount Carmel's staff just this past spring to be their marketing coordinator, because she came in with our program, demonstrate here's already what I can do, and there happened to be a need that she could meet right then and there, but then also the training that she got through the Awaken Project, actually that's kind of what I'd say completed her ability to step into this new role, and really allow her to, she basically had a 4-month interview through us, which is really cool for Mount Carmel. Said she was able to prove that she was as trustworthy as she was by being a part of what we were doing. So, and we just launched like this past fall, so it's cool to already see dividends being paid. Again, even though like in the grand scheme of things, what we're doing on maybe some of our terms is this big, but to see her, I mean, I'm not going to read the whole quote, but to even know that the difference that this has made just for her, it's like, okay, game on, sweet. And I'm not necessarily one for like, all right, if just like one person comes to Jesus, or like one person's life's changed and the whole thing's worth it. I mean, sure, for that one person, absolutely. We're not going to take anything away from that one person, but like, let's get some more. Let's keep this train rolling. And so that's where we're at right now. Is who else is out there? Who else is in line to have a similar experience like this? So.
Yeah. Cool. All right, the podcast. So I oversee kind of all things on our website, some videos, our podcast. I've been slacking really bad at social media, so don't go and look at that. It's terrible. But anyways, this is how our ministry started. So we partnered up with an organization called Link, L-I-N-C. There's one in the Twin Cities. I think there's a few, but specifically the one in the Twin Cities. And the guy we met with, his name is Ben. What's his last name?
Ben Griffin.
Mm-hmm. Ben Griffin. Great guy. And they're all about launching new ministries, helping them come alongside of you so you get stuff started, strategically planning, all this stuff. And he's like, man, how do we, like, what can you do right now? And what's free? And we're like, podcasting. So we got some podcast equipment. We launched it, and it's focused on young adult leadership. And we saw it as a way of connecting with young adults on their phones anywhere they go. And I think, this is just my take, I think that, well, here's the backstory. Let me go back. We met with another guy, and we were telling him about the Awaken Project. We were like, we really think that young adults need something for discipleship. How does that, we were thinking at first, like, how does that enter into a church? How do we apply that to all these different things? And the pastor's response really rubbed me the wrong way, because he goes, it's just not going to work. Your thought of a program, it's not going to work, because discipleship isn't a program. Discipleship is like a lifelong journey with people as you go. And so, of course, I'm upset, because he's like shutting down our idea right there and like, just give up. But the way that I saw it is the podcast, and you don't have to take this, but the podcast, in a way, can help disciple people. So we bring people on, leaders, like when you listen to a leadership podcast, the information that we take in and the stuff that we listen to influences who we are and what we're doing. And so, in my opinion, I see that as a way, whether or not the person on the other side knows it, but I see it as a form of discipleship. So that is what we do on the podcast. We interview pastors, there's leaders. Steven and I ramble a lot on some of the episodes. We're going to be kicking off a series soon on young adult leadership. So I'm going to be interviewing specifically young adults in leadership in the church. So I got a couple people lined up, which I'm really excited about. This is a great platform to utilize. So I would highly encourage you, like in your own ministries, like this is free. It takes a little bit to set up, I'll be honest. But once you get it set up, it's good. It's gold.
Yeah. We talk about Anchor for a little bit.
Yeah. So we're on everything.
We're on everything.
Yeah. So we're on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah. When we use a hosting site called Anchor, there it's free hosting, which is great. We started with SoundCloud, and then after 250 minutes of content we put on SoundCloud, they were like, okay, now you got to get a premium subscription to host here, and then we found out about Anchor, which has been free to anyone. SoundCloud, technically, they still have our first episode held hostage. So you scroll down to the very bottom of the Awaken Project podcast. It starts with episode 2. We have an episode 1. It's just we haven't actually taken it back from SoundCloud yet. Yeah. So we should probably do that at some point.
Right.
But
yeah, so this is a great platform to utilize. I'm all about the free stuff. So like YouTube, podcasting, and I think, I don't know, what do you guys do? I didn't ask. Are you guys with the church?
We do college ministry, and I'm on the board at our church.
Cool.
So we're with a community college near
Yeah.
Nice. Where's that at?
Ankeny, Iowa.
Ankeny.
Des Moines.
Yeah. Oh,
But
good.
you guys are in Minnesota, right? So
We're Minnesota. Yeah, well, we get a lot of people from Drake, Iowa State, up for our summer stuff. So we're
A lot of ours are transferring to Iowa State.
yeah, cool.
Well,
We're,
yes.
Yeah, we're similar to you guys because we DMAC's a 2-year college, so we have a lot of turnover. So it's very like in 1 year, maybe 2
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we chatted earlier. What about you? Where are you?
So I am a DCE in Merrill, Wisconsin. That's my first year there, but I actually worked at Mount Carmel.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm familiar with that.
Gotcha. And then, Pastor.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
I'm in a new church, so I've been there a year. I used to work with, I used to be by Oakland University, which is a secular school outside of Detroit, and I would do mentoring with the ministry there. It was Cultivate, it was like an interdenominational ministry that mentors students one-on-one. And so I'm at this new church and trying to figure out what to do,
Yeah.
because there's actually zero going on at the church for anyone until you have kids.
Really?
Yeah.
We started the
Yeah.
college ministry in the fall because we're actually a church plant. There's not a church in town, and they didn't have anything. For
Our
college.
building is right basically on campus.
Okay.
So we're like, we need to have a college ministry if we're like the closest church to campus.
Yeah.
So we looked around and we're like, well, I guess probably if we don't do it, nobody's going to. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean with this too, I mean, so I had an internship 2019 at Mount Carmel. My title was literally internship developer because I just needed somebody to come in and deal with what are we going to do about this. And shocker, I came in not to say that like I had anything like any magic touch, whatever, but just a human dedicated to the issue. Things happened. Wow. And then when I left at the end of the summer, shocker, nothing happened. But just having someone actually like diligently working at this, I mean, it's honestly, I think that's the secret.
Yeah.
It's just, can you find someone that's actually willing to stick through the, those first couple of years of, well, this isn't going all that well, but at least we're getting somewhere, so.
Yeah. And then I put self-promotion because on podcasts and YouTube, you can
Yeah.
talk about yourself a lot.
We haven't gotten a student yet.
For free.
We haven't gotten a student yet from the podcast, but I've been really surprised by how many people, even if they're just curious about what we do, they go back and they reference, oh, I listened to that episode, just as because it's information that's in depth and free, and they can choose, whatever you've got out in terms of your title, they can go and find that really, really easily. So it's nice that like I've been able to talk to people a lot more easily that have listened to the podcast, and they say, oh, I listened to that episode. Tell me more about that. I'm like, oh, perfect, let's go, versus always having to start from square one every single time. And honestly, I've been surprised by like we put it out and just think that we're talking to a brick wall, like who's actually going to listen to this thing, but then you just, people check it out, if even like I think that's something that I had to learn throughout it, was like people are going to listen, even if it's only like 20, that's 20 people that are interested in what you're doing, and you can work with that, so.
And I should say, Anchor is incredible with tracking who's listening. So we actually, our goal was the age range of 18 to 25, and that's where pretty much all of our listeners.
But it's about 75%.
Yeah.
So,
you can
yeah.
see that. Yeah, I know, and there's like a big podcast boom because of COVID, right? But I think that it's perfect. Like it's needed. And a little bit, maybe it's because I'm into tech, but I think that a lot of, not the metaverse, but a lot of church online stuff is going to become more important than we might think. I don't personally agree with it, but that's just the way it's going to be. Like, whether or not we agree with it or not, like, there was actually a Lutheran article that came out. It was an LCMS one, and I was shocked. But they said that they did a survey with a bunch of different congregations, and 1/3 of the LCMS said they're not going to go back to church even after COVID's done. They're just going to worship online. They're going to sit on their couch. That's what they're going to do. So, and I think that when the LCMS publishes something like that, I'm like, okay, we got to figure out a way to actually use these platforms to our advantage, but also be encouraging on them and help point people to the gospel and who Jesus is. So if you need help with any of that, shoot me an email. I'll give you my email. I can help set you up.
Cool. We got here. So in terms of the board, please, from myself and Blake, this is what we looked like about 2 years ago. I was somewhere in between Geico Caveman and Spanish Fabio. So yeah, that's fun. What I love, so I don't expect any of you all to know any of these people on the board. They're all, if you'd like to get in contact with any of these people, they are fantastic in terms of young adult ministry. But the reason that I have all these people up here is that they all understand what we're about, not in the sense of like they're in it every single day with us. I mean, we only talk to them maybe sometimes, quarterly, even at board meetings. But that they all understand the vision of the Awaken Project and they're willing to stick it out with us. And I think that's, you don't, like when you're looking for people that are trying to, or you're trying to get people around whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, we found that you don't necessarily need people that are in it every single day with you, but rather people that, as long as they know what you're doing and as soon as you give them a call and they're willing to support you right then and there, that's invaluable. Because I mean, I talked to, if I can get a hold of Nathan Hoff the same day that I shoot him a text, that's huge, because he's talking to so many people. But every time that I talk to him, I mean, he's right then there. He's got a fantastic nugget for, here's what you're dealing with. You should try this. Go do this. And for me at least, that's been so much more valuable than board members that maybe are more accessible in terms of like a person to person, but at the end of the day, you just know that there's really not as much of a connection in terms of the real vision. So that's why they're here. And honestly, I've heard a lot of people here, talk about like, I guess the classic church conundrum, it's the board, it's the board, it's the board. We don't have that issue. Like, our board is fantastic, which I'm like, wow, okay, that's not everybody's reality, but it's ours. So praise God,
Yeah, and I think something that's neat, so Nate and Brian, they're both pastors, and they have gap year programs that they put on as well. So, when I say that to some people, they're like, why do you have people who are like competing with you, going in on this with you? I don't see it as a competition. I see it as, hey, let's get young adults plugged into these places. Like, let's get them connected. And if it's not with us, we want it to be with them, because we trust them, we know that it's going to be a great experience for students. So, I don't know, do you talk about partnerships a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's the next slide. Ha! It is the next slide. Perfect. Yeah, I was saying, this is nowhere close to just the Awaken Project. I mean, every single one of these organizations we work with pretty closely in one way or another. I mean, Mount Carmel Host Site, Light Promotions, that's who we do Quake Through, World Mission Prayer League, they're a mission sending organization out of the Twin Cities, and they come up to Mount Carmel. They've got they call it their hunky-dory retreat, but all their missionaries from around the world, they've got a week at camp, and then they'll do volunteering projects throughout the week, but then a lot of Mount Carmel people then become Wimple, it's WMPL, somehow pronounced that as Wimple. But missionaries with them, Quake with Life Promotions, and then Canadian Lutheran Bible Institute and Trinity San Pedro are two. So Trinity, that's Nate Hoff's church, and then CLBI, that's the last remaining Lutheran Bible Institute branch. They're up in Camrose, Alberta. But yeah, they're also looking for young adults. They're also looking for students. But in terms of learning how to disciple, and what are you doing? Look, try this. What about this? They have been beyond invaluable. We're in this together, and there's more than enough students to go around. It's not like we're all fighting for the same people. I mean, in theory, there is plenty for all of us, but it's a matter of how do we not view it as, okay, you're here, we're here, they're there, and we all just kind of do our own thing. But this is truly, it's the kingdom of God discipling all together. We just happen to be, all locally where we are. And so to lean back on this has been incredibly valuable, not just us trying to go at it alone. So, what to do and keep in mind. So this is the point where, just from what we've learned, here's what helps us. So we talked in the beginning, find a need and fill it. I mean, I think the amount of people that I've talked to that when they just try and do young adult ministry and they simply just have it just because we're supposed to, or just because we feel like, like we just make that one guy better who's been harping on it for a couple of years, you might find some success there, but if you're not filling a need, then, or you can say, in this community, here's how we can formulate getting young adults together in order to meet this specific community. And that's when you're really going to find success, I think, with young adult ministry. Don't go solo, just what we talked about, with have people around you, and depending on I mean, what their people around you. I mean, it doesn't have to be people that are in it every single day.
Can I ask a question on the first point?
Yeah.
So you said find a need and fill it, and I feel like we're in a similar position to you guys. You said there's other people on your board that already do similar things, like a gap year thing, right? And we have on our college campus, there are 2 other non-denominational student ministries, and so we're like, we still feel that there's a need there to reach kids, and we have really sound theology, but there's already Christian groups on the school. So I guess, how did you guys feel like you were filling a new need with what you were doing? Or
I mean,
So what we really did is, for our program specifically, is we looked at YWAM. I mean, the biggest gap year / discipleship thing that's out there. And not bashing YWAM, there's some good YWAM bases, and some of my youth students have gone through them. But the biggest thing that we saw was the lack of theology that's presented. And what we want to create is a place where students can come and just sit at the feet of Jesus for the year and really dive into what we believe to be like really good theology. And so that's all those teachers that we have come out, like they align with that as well. So that's I guess that's the need or the difference. So I don't know. I'm in Central Florida, and there's a YWAM base there. It's good, but it's a lot of height. And they've gotten a little bit weird recently. And so, what if a student doesn't want that? Yeah. And it's more expensive as well. So, our program is $3,500 for the year, and YWAM I think is 12.
Well, $10,000 plus outreach.
Yeah.
Which would be 15.
So we wanted to create that need as well, like a cheaper opportunity. So, not bashing YWAM, they do good stuff too, but we just wanted to make sure that we had, that's all.
And like when I typed that, I think what I was thinking of, I mean, for us it was, all right, let's make a gap year to meet the needs of Mount Carmel. But let's say if you're in a church context, you're not at a retreat center, then like, can we have some type of young adult group that, whether it's partnering with our youth group, we've got a homeless ministry like that. So the young adult group that I go to at my church in town, back in Alexandria, we're really involved. We're starting a new, there's a nonprofit in town called Love Inc. And so right now, a lot of young adults, they help out with the weekly homeless ministry that happens at church. And so that's something that we do consistently, and so it's not just like, when I say fill a need, okay, young adults need the gospel, sure. But what is literally happening in your community that young adults can center around and actually plug in with, versus just, let's just, eat and do Bible study. Not anything wrong with that, but if there's something a little bit more, that it gives something that people actually latch onto, which I think, the very next one, young adults need some skin in the game. If you give them something to do, something that I appreciate at least, if you give me something to actually latch onto in a ministry, I'm going to be a lot more certain that I want to come back to that, versus just we're here for fluff and, to make ourselves feel better ourselves. I can go do that really anywhere. I don't need to come to your thing. But if we're actually going to plug in and get our feet dirty a little bit, then all right, we're onto something.
Yeah. Is that kind of?
Yeah, no, yep, that helps.
Cool. What Blake harped on, the digital world needs to be your friend. I mean, think what you want, but it's not going away.
Yeah. Meta church.
Meta church. There you go. Blake, with the next one, Young Adult Ministry Requires Consistency. Blake sent me a book a couple of years ago. Church is like a flywheel. That's what it was called. Yeah, but if you can picture the piece of playground equipment, that it's the big wheel, that it's pretty hard to start pushing at first, but then once you get going, good luck. That thing's it's going to spin for a long time. And the main concept in that book is, a lot of churches, parachurches, that when they're first getting off the ground, just grassroots, ground up, it takes about 3 years to finally get yourself going. And the reason why a lot of things burn out, flame out, at least according to this book, which I think is held true, is that you get to year 1.5, year 2, you're like, this isn't working. Nothing's actually happening. So what the heck? We're just, this is a waste of our time. Well, you're already you're 2/3 of the way there. Just keep going. Just get to year 3. Get to year 3.
Part of it's getting recognition.
Yeah. And it's coming out to, for us at least, it's coming out to stuff like this and just talking to people. It's a lot of you're gonna be a lot of, hi, my name is, this is what we do. So be it. But then what happens is, I mean, we're already starting to see is people like, they recognize your product and then they trust you, and then lo and behold, it becomes a lot easier to get yourself into doors. It just takes time. Shocker, you know. And I'm not saying that as like that's any new information, but like a reminder of it's not going to happen overnight. I needed that a lot of times. So yeah.
Amazon Prime has wrecked our lives.
It has. Yeah.
2 days, it doesn't happen.
So, and then survey your local landscape. Just what's going on in your local community. I mean, there's a million and one things out there. It's just a matter of what do you know with the people around you, your capabilities. You know, what can you meet, and then / like what is it that for whatever reason like this one piece just keeps you up at night. Like I really think that God's speaking to us with this. There's something there, you know. So, what not to do? Oh man. With anything Gen Z, I mean, fake authenticity will get snuffed out pretty quickly. Like, no need to put on a front. Just, I feel like that goes without saying. Or acting like you have all the answers. I think that's what I learned the most with walking with our students this past year was that they responded best to me when I was just walking alongside of them versus trying to come in as, you know, this young chipper 25-year-old's like, oh yeah, like we got this organization off the ground. I know things. Not even close. Not even close. When they said, all right, here's someone that's a little bit farther ahead of me that's willing to work through this stuff with me, try to find some answers. Now we're getting somewhere, you know, versus like knowing like I have a clue. And like I don't know. I mean, we all know a few things. You know, let's not discredit what we know, but in terms of acting like we know everything, you know, that's not going to do any good.
And I think I don't know. It's especially so. I work with youth in Florida, and so I really like the number one point is straight up legit. Like if they sense like unauthenticity, they're not gonna come back. And then the other part too, like the importance of just walking alongside young adults and being like, I'm in this with you, not being the authority, I guess, you know, because we're all walking through it together. So I guess I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. Like, there's so much research just saying about like Gen Z and like authenticity is the number one thing they're looking for in a church, and inauthenticity is the number one reason, you know, Gen Z millennials are leaving the church. So like, you know, in any ministry, being authentic and being open with saying you don't have all the answers, but you'll get back to them. That's
Which is, I think, kind of, so like what you two mentioned, so you're specifically an LCMS ministry on campus. I mean, I think that's what's so cool
it's
about
not just for LCMS kids, but our church. We stem out our LCMS church and our theology is LCMS.
I mean, I think that's, I mean, just the crown jewel that what makes the Lutheran Church, I mean, as I'd say it's I mean, the mighty fortress that we love to sing about is that all of us recognize that we are so in need of God's grace every day, you know, that to actually have someone admit that and to do like that's why I love confession and absolution is fantastic. Psalm 51, that's on my list for please memorize this because oh my goodness, it's so just perfect at like, I mean, not that I ever want to find myself in David's situation. I don't want to do that. But in terms of being willing to you yourself go through that, like, I'm a sinner in need of God's grace. This is now I'm forgiven and now I get to go respond to the gospel. I mean, so many other places, they might feather on it a little bit, but they don't actually, it's not, you know.
That's what we try to hammer home because the big thing on our campus is once I accepted Jesus, it's the accept Jesus movement, and you have to do something, and that's and then because what happens is these kids that grew up in some other denomination and these accept Jesus people go tell them their baptism wasn't real because they happened when they were 6 months old or whatever. We're like, no, because baptism is not something you do. You're like everything comes from God, so you don't look at did I do certain things good enough to know if I'm saved. You just look at the cross and you look at your baptism and the promises and that. So that's. I mean, that's our focus. That's what I want our kids to our students, I shouldn't say kids. And understand.
And like, maybe not everyone's going to get that just because it is, so I don't want to say foreign to like the acceptance of, like just say yes to Jesus and that's it. But then over time, if that's the same message day in and day out, and then they start to realize maybe some of the pomp and circumstance, just they figure out that I have to keep myself looking a certain way to maintain that like the state that I was in when I first accepted Jesus. I mean, I don't know. I think
it's exhausting. The emotional
Yeah.
high from when you accepted Jesus goes away, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to
Yeah.
do something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else we got? Young Adult Ministry is Youth Group 2.0. I put this one too, just because, I mean, I love Youth Group. Blake, what you do with middle school and high school students, we support it for teenagers, but I think, Young Adult Ministry, it's really the first time that, for a lot of us that you're living on your own, you've got roommates for the first time, you're trying to figure out how to support yourself financially. That if it's just, the social hour on Wednesday nights, then you're, again, missing the point. But if it actually becomes like, here's how we tackle the skills that we need to learn this particular point in time, and then have people surround us that are coaching us. That's what I love what we do, is that I think we say, here's how you wrap a cable, here's how you're going to run, here's how you're going to set up programming for an event, and actually give them the skill versus just let's just hang out. Because I think that, I don't know, for all of you guys, I mean, how many times have you seen friends? I wish we would have had like a class in high school that would have taught me how to balance a checkbook, Yeah, right. It's actually like, I want this skill that I know that I need for this particular for this particular period of life, but no one actually ever taught me. So now what do we do if we simply just say, okay, let's learn? Doesn't have to be flashy. Let's take the skills that we know we're going to be used day in and day out and do that. And there's a ministry there. And it doesn't have to be, huge pomp and circumstance. It can just be, let's learn how to do life well. And yeah, it works. And the last bit, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, that it's all like, they leave the church. They don't care about Jesus. They don't care about whatever's going on in the church. Like, you'd be surprised how many people, if anything, I mean, I don't remember who mentioned it here, but that everyone's looking for something. There's people that are still looking for that acceptance, that authenticity, and they're maybe willing to hear it from like they had maybe not the best experience with their church at home, but they're at least willing to listen to somebody that's just coming from a different side of it, and who knows, it might be you, And so to write kids off like, oh, like they've heard it, they're done, they're set, like, you just never know. Some kids might be, but some kids might not be. And I think from what I've learned too when talking about this is that the people that honestly that I look at them right away and I write them off, you're not going to care about what I'm talking about. I just give them 2 minutes to hear a little bit. It might not be the whole thing, but it might be one specific thing that they're interested in, and then we can have a legit conversation about that. So there you go. That's our website. So if any of this is interesting, it's on the. If you grab the brochure, it's on there too. The back of my email address too. So just instead of Stephen, just put www. And that's the website as well. But yeah, any questions? Additional questions? Observations? Feedback?
2 questions.
Yes.
So how do you go about advertising/paying for creating a logo, funding that?
We have one of the best deals in the world right now in terms of our advertising. So Courtney, who was mentioned, so she's hired on full time by Mount Carmel because of the partnership we have with Mount Carmel. She's got about 5 hours a week that she's allotted to do all of this, and so she's paid by Mount Carmel to do our marketing, which is like, yes, let's go, because she's really good at it, and we don't have to pay her, but she's still paid. We're not ripping her off, so that's cool. That's what we do. But then it also, I mean, Blake does. Just on a still volunteer basis. Podcast editing and website design, that stuff too.
Yeah, so our website, we just did Squarespace. We had to pay for the thing. And actually our logo, Becca,
Board
was on
member.
our board, board member actually created it for us. So that was really neat. But if you haven't used Canva will be your best
that's
friend.
a lot.
Yeah. And they're free. It's free for nonprofits.
Okay.
So.
Do you know, you'd have to use your own photo though, if you use it in the camera, right? And
No.
then it'd be copyright?
No.
They also have stock images too that you can. If it's already in the app, then it's free reign.
Yeah, you're free to, because we use that a ton at our church, and everything everything in the app you are allowed to use and reproduce and change in any which way and throw out there.
Mm.
So regular people can learn how to do websites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've used Canva before. I just
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the it's gonna take a little bit of money to create this stuff and advertise. I mean, it stinks. Like we've been really blessed. Like the brochures Steven's mom makes. So she actually just donates her time and the resources for that.
Mhm.
Business cards are dirt cheap right now. Then the posters we print in-house. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of time for most of the stuff. But.
And like part of it, so like with the posters, like so it's Mount Carmel's paper, it's Mount Carmel's ink. But like what we provided for them this past year in terms of our students helping out with like our hospitality coordinator, she had a really bad bout with COVID. So she was out for a month and our students picked up a lot of that slack. And so like, it's not like we're just freeloading, like we're still doing stuff, we're still filling needs. But what happens then is, you fill the need and people are going to help you out and like, they're maybe not going to pay you, but like they'll give you free posters. They'll give you, anything else that I print off. Like I try to keep track of it just to say, here's what we're doing. But like, there's no expectation for us to then like reimburse on that. It's just, we're going to help you out because you need this and you're already helping us out in this way. So those partnerships are legit. They pay for themselves in ways that aren't monetary, so.
Now, I missed the beginning, so my apologies if that. This is what you guys are doing up there in Mount Carmel.
Yeah.
Right? Did you guys ever consider taking this and doing it other places too? Because you're down there in Orlando,
That's
and it's
the
the
dream,
same kind
brother.
of thing. Because even like the podcast and other stuff, having that base and then starting different places in other cities.
Yeah, I think.
Would you be open to that? Or are you considering that? 'Cause
I mean, I think we're open to the conversation anywhere, really.
Yeah, that's the dream. Like we're trying to lock in on something that's working right now, and we're always going to be reevaluating what can we do better, how can we fill more needs. But I think the dream is to take it other places, and I think Mount Carmel, why it's such an incredible spot for us, is we charge $3,500 for the whole year. The students have to pay for food by themselves, but they get like a whole cabin to themselves. It's got a kitchen, it's got a bathroom.
You live on a
everything.
lake for free. I mean, come on now.
It's
Yeah.
surrounded on a lake, and they've given
It's a whole
us.
year for 3,500.
For
Yeah.
8 months.
For
8
8
months. Well, if you want to do a whole year, then you just work on Mount Carmel staff. Talk to Devin about that. But then you get paid to be on that. So at that point, you're employed by Mount Carmel. You're no longer under the Awaken Project umbrella.
But they have this housing that's just sitting there. And so whether or not we have students on campus, it'd be sitting there. So they're like, you guys can live here for free, just help out with these events. And so that's the hardest part about taking it somewhere else is we don't have, But if a church has that, right? Or if another place has that availability, or if they want to do host home ministry for that 8 months, and you have families in your congregation that are willing to take on students from different areas, like, go for it. Because you got pastors in-house, you got youth workers in-house, like, you could probably find, especially in Michigan, I mean, you got some solid people up in that district, so you could bring in people to teach.
I think that's where the conversation comes into, is that like it doesn't have to be exactly this wherever you are. I think that's what's cool about what we do at Mount Carmel is that we specifically designed it to meet Mount Carmel's needs, but then like who's to say you can't have a similar type of conversation but to meet, your church or your college, if it's under the Awaken Project umbrella, then sure we can help you sponsor that however we can. But then whatever's going on in Ankeny, Iowa, well, that's unique to Ankeny, Iowa, But at least to have some form of oversight that understands that, like, kind of what we talked, like all those other organizations, like we're not officially tied in with any of them, but we all understand that we help each other out a lot, and that we're all meeting needs specific to where we are, So.
Take students from anywhere then, it's just application process eventually once you guys get one.
Yeah, right now the camp's only allowing us 12 students. So
Well,
that's-
it's because that's all that we have room for.
Yeah.
So right now there's a dream for a big retreat center that you might finally be going away. We'll see. But so instead of 12, that could potentially go up to like 25, 30, which would be huge. But that's literally the physical capacity that we have, you know. Or like when we took a trip out to Olympia, Washington at the end of November, beginning of December, and so we partnered with the Lutheran Brethren Church out there, and so right now they're working on building their own facilities for some type of Bible school, and so their goal is, I think, 24, you know, and so that's what they can provide, and I mean that's that, yeah. But I think where I'm trying to go with this, it's just so location specific, but that any of those cappers isn't like 12 for someone else might be minuscule, but for us that's max capacity, and that's a good thing, you know. But we're going to work with that.
Yeah, and Steven's the only one boots on the ground, so it's all that we can probably afford to do.
Well, for now.
For now.
For now.
So, yeah.
But even like I mean, I still did a lot of the stuff like without being paid for the first, I think, 4 months of this when I was actually doing this full time. I mean, Blake's been doing this, I mean, part-time volunteer for a while. And I think, I mean, we don't pay the board. We're not allowed to pay the board. But people that, again, willing to stick it through, and they're willing to work through the vision, whatever it might look like. I think that's ultimately the best case scenario. I mean, I need to be paid just because you need someone to, you know, keep things moving. For the scale they're at right now, and then I mean that need was provided for. You know, I haven't had to worry about, all right, was my paycheck going to come through just for this specific need? And I'm sure that as needs continue to arise based on, you know, what God wants to do with this, then they're provided for. Not because we're making it big or anything, but like the need that we saw was provided for in the ways that we didn't expect, and who's to say that wouldn't happen differently another way? So. Any other questions, comments?
When the teachers come in to run the class, the different instructors, how long is that? Maybe you answered this before.
Monday through Friday.
It's
Yeah.
For how long? What's the?
It winds up being it's about 15 hours for the week of class time.
So what we do is we have a week. It's essentially 2.5 months.
2.5, 3.
2.5, 3. So we have a week of teaching, and then there's a week of like community outreach, and they really dive into that week of stuff that they just learned, because it's a ton of information.
Yep.
And so we kind of give them that week, and then they serve on campus at the camp.
Yep.
We get them, if they want to,
Yep.
plugged in town, and then with Thanksgiving, I think Thanksgiving runs in that too.
Well, it was week of Thanksgiving was the break, and then the week after that we did our Washington trip. I think this next year we're hoping to add on more classes. This past year we just had 6. This upcoming semester it'd be nice to be at 10 or 11. What wound up happening ultimately was the model of if there was a teacher and then a work week and a teacher work, that worked well, but what wound up happening with students, they completed everything that they needed to do just fine, and we're like, okay, let's push the envelope a little bit. I think that's something that we had learned, was that they're able to be challenged. We still want to preserve a Sabbath, all that kind of stuff, but that they're able to be pushed academically, at least, because we're not accredited. So like anything that we do academically is simply for it's their learning. It's their benefit. It's not necessarily in order to obtain this degree, this license, whatever. And so, I completely lost where I was going with that. Oh my goodness. I'll let somebody else talk. It'll come back to me at some point.
This past year, like at the beginning of the year, I really focused in on that. Like, hey, this is for your benefit. We're bringing these people here for you. Oh my gosh, that's not good.
We're ruining
That's not
everything.
good.
Yeah.
I'll fix it.
We just-
But I was like, this is for you. Like, we're bringing people in for you, and so take advantage of this. Learn as much as you can. Like, soak this in. Like, this is all for your benefit.
And that's what I love. Courtney, actually, she's the one that enlightened me to this, at least. That what she was really thankful for what we were doing is, so she worked for Life Promotions actually before she came for us, and so going to Liberty University, it's a Christian university. For the first time in her life with the Awaken Project, she could study the Bible, be in community together. She didn't have to do it for a job. She didn't have to do it for a degree. She could do it simply just to do it, which is really, that's what we want to do. That's what we all want to do at the end of the day, and this just happened to be the thing that finally got her to that point. And not to say that you can't also do that when you're your vocation as a DC or college ministry or whatever, but to finally have a place where you can learn to do it simply for pursuing Jesus' sake to start, and then learn how to then, okay, here's my base, here's what I know I can do. Like one of the classes that it was a mini class, he wasn't listed up there, but we did a mini week on inductive Bible study, and so teaching kids like, here's how you become a self-feeder. In theory, with that's here's how to do inductive Bible study all by yourself. You can take that wherever the heck you want to go, and it's simply just to get to know Jesus for Jesus' sake. And then, oh, by the way, everything that you go do, that's where the overflow, to use that terminology, of your time, in Scripture, then really becomes consistent. It becomes something that is reliable, because you are able to do that for yourself and not have to always be dependent on a deadline per se to be in the Word,